Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back for another EVE Online video. Today's video is going to be a discussion video because I want to talk about the latest devblog that CCP released about EVE Online. This one is quite controversial. It's about the resource distribution in the game, and perhaps before we get started I should try to cover some of these controversies around this devblog. CCP also had a live stream after releasing the devblog where they tried to explain some of it, and I think the two big ones I want to talk a little bit about because they are definitely understandably quite difficult for the player base, but I personally feel like CCP's explanations hold water. So first of all, I think the big one, the CSM, it was not kept in the loop and they were not happy with this change at all, and so here you do feel like the CSM could not do what they normally are allowed to do when it comes to development of EVE Online, that is give advice and give their feedback so that they could influence this very specific part of the development of EVE Online. Now, I feel like CCP was pretty straightforward when it comes to that on the live stream. They're saying that yes, when it comes to the resource crunch, resource distribution and things like that, we have a plan, we have a roadmap, and we want to avoid anything that could look like partisanship, unfair advantages, people knowing stuff beforehand. It is what we absolutely do not want when it comes to these changes, and so for this we are going to say this is what we are developing, and we're keeping every single player out of the loop, and that includes the CSM for this. For me, that's understandable. This is something that is really big for the entire sandbox and could potentially lead to unfair advantages that would be so big in and of themselves, so unacceptable for the player base, that playing it safe on that, for me personally, does make sense. The other controversy is, of course, the devblog itself. More nerfs to resources in EVE Online, to industry in EVE Online, to availability in EVE Online. I think some players, myself included, thought that perhaps we were starting to get close to the end of the scarcity phase. Nope, we are getting hit very hard yet again. And on that front, well, CCP tried to explain that, well, this is part of a big plan, part of a roadmap that they do have, but that they don't or not ready to share with the player base at the moment. And there you may call me naive, but I personally believe them on that. I do think that CCP has goals and plans and a roadmap when it comes to the resources in EVE Online in mind, where the end game is a more dynamic system that is quite a bit more balanced than what we have at the moment. So if you want to read the devblog for yourself, you can always go to eveonline.com, then you click on the news link, which brings you to this, the articles website, and then down here we have the devblogs, including of course resource distribution update. This is the devblog where it's all about, or that it's all about, and I do think it's worth it to read this introduction here. A healthy economic environment where players can find opportunities by making interesting choices is the goal. One of the key pillars of EVE is that loss has meaning, and they're just straight up saying it. And a state is being reached where loss is not meaningful anymore for veteran players. It is imperative both for EVE's success and the well-being of its inhabitants that the economy resides within a healthy state. So they're very clearly pointing towards the massive stockpiles, the self-sufficiency that a lot of these big Gnostic alliances have reached, and just the efficiency with which they can now extract resources, create everything, pretty much everything that they need in the game, is considered a problem because, well, the meme that does exist quite frequently on the subreddit of already replaced is something that is becoming a problem for the sandbox itself. Here, I'm just gonna straight out say it, I do think that CCP may have been spooked a little bit by seeing what happened on the Chinese server when, you know, botting is let go, when everything becomes really accessible, and you get this very stale universe that ends up being dominated by, well, a few very organized veteran players, and that this is probably Also a bit of a response, this is not how they want EVE Online itself to end. And I personally share that. I can still remember when I lost my first Hulk to a goddamn can flipper. That really hurt, and that is very harsh. That is of course the nature of EVE Online, but it is also, for me, it has been a very big hook and a very big part of the value of spending time in EVE Online, because everything that you do in the game, well, up until perhaps the last couple of years, has value, is a part of the sandbox that influences the entire sandbox and matters. And so they want to bring that back into the game, and this is all part of that plan. So what are they going to do? Well, this is, in my opinion, this is described as the big change, the Asteroid DNA, but I think that this is the big one. They are going to give certain parts of space exclusive production of certain minerals. So HiSec will become the exclusive producer of tritanium, LowSec for isogen and inoxium, and then NullSec for zydrine, megasite, and morphite. And this is very clearly completing the 180, which they had already announced when they first announced the drought phase in EVE Online, where I'm gonna say 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not exactly sure of the timeline and which patch or which expansion or something like that cemented all of this, but back then CCP clearly developed the game towards more self-sufficiency for NullSec itself. They were far more able to just grab all the resources locally, set up all of the industry locally, and then just build their own stuff to whichever scale they could themselves manage. And so you got, well, the super capital situation, the Titan situation, the keep stars that kept popping up, and this is of course part of the problem for CCP. And so this 180 is going to go, nobody is going to be self-reliant anymore. You want tritanium, you'll need somehow to get it from HiSec. You want isogen and inoxium, you'll need to get it from LowSec. And I personally think that this one will be very, very interesting to see how that one plays out. So very big change, completing that 180 from self-sufficient areas of space to nobody being self-sufficient. We all become interdependent once again. Another bit is the asteroid ore DNA. So we are getting changes to the minerals that these asteroids will yield, and I think you can tell there's a lot of minus signs over here in the ones that we know. For instance, Veldspar goes from 415 as a baseline tritanium value down to 400 scordite, completely gutted, less than half the tritanium it had before, almost half the pyrite it had before. This one is really nerfed very hard. You could go through all of this in detail, but it's pretty obvious that all of them, or pretty much all of them, are getting nerfed in order to, of course, make this happen. Tritanium becoming unique to HiSec, isogen inoxium for LowSec, zydrine, megasite, and morphite to NullSec, with a small exception apparently through some soft anomalies. There will still be some inoxium sources and tritanium sources in NullSec as well, but don't expect that to be able to keep the factories up and running there. I do want to touch on what's happening down here, something that I think a lot of players have missed, and for me is a strong indication that there is indeed a roadmap. Thalassanite, 40,000 tritanium plus 27,500. Racovine, 40,000 tritanium plus 37,800. And Besnacine, 40,000 tritanium as well, plus 26,800. So this is a very big source of tritanium that's coming online, and it is of course tied to the Triglavian Eden.com storyline, to the invasions, to what's happening there. And I think that this is potential, like a first hint at where all of this is going. New resource opportunities, in my opinion, are very likely to be tied to the outcome of the Triglavian Eden.com storyline, the zenith of the invasions. We still have no clue as to what's going to happen, but major changes are still coming. That's pretty damn sure, and part of that may also mean new opportunities to find and gather resources in EVE Online. So of course this is a big nerf, this is the drought, but this seems to be a sign that there is stuff on the horizon for more resources again as well. Down here we've got some more details on what's happening. For instance, asteroid belts in HiSec lose all umber and kernite. Again, that is to make that exclusivity a reality. Or anomalies. I can understand this feeling as a bit of a loss. I personally loved the fact that sometimes you had an ore anomaly pop up in the TAL, and that meant, all right, I can create some extra locally created zydrine, grab a little bit of extra inoxium and things like that. But nope, it's all going to be gone. All ore anomalies will be removed removed from high-sec systems. Low-sec will be changed as well in order to, of course, make them the Isogen and Noxium kings. And then in wormholes, that one was also a little bit of a controversy. Everything is gone. The following ores and their variations will be removed from wormhole anomalies. Basically everything. It's probably not exactly everything, but it's really almost gone. And on this one, I think CCP was pretty clear during the live stream as well. They feel like wormhole space already has something unique, which is the tech tree production, of course, with the gases and things like that. They acknowledge that at the moment tech tree cruisers are in a pretty bad spot, but they're not the team that's going to rebalance that, unfortunately. But yeah, this is of course something that that will hit the wormhole residents at the moment very hard, but I would not lose hope on that, because CCP also very clearly stated that this is cleaning up wormholes in order to create room for other and new stuff. And as I've said, I'm seeing the developing storyline as a source of new opportunities that will come, and so I do think that the wormholes will get their own new things as well. So yeah, it's the crunch, which is very unfortunate, of course. This feels very punishing. This is a very big nerf on a lot of plans that a lot of players probably have, but CCP consider these necessary, and wormholes are hit pretty hard with all of this as well, of course. There's also change to gas sites and to ice sites. Now, at one point I was worried that we may be running out of ice in EVE Online, but looking at the current fuel prices, I don't think we have to be worried just yet. But yeah, it's more nerfing, right? In case space, reduced probability of gas sites, reduced probability of ice sites as well. It's just across the board less resources available, and another crunch phase that is coming. So CCP also states some of the expectations as to the impact on the game: more movement in low-sec and potentially more destruction, increase of mining ship losses, more market transactions for ores and minerals, mineral income from refined items to increase. I find this one pretty interesting. I hadn't thought about it myself when I first went through the dev blog and things like that, but sometimes I just, run exploration sites and actually drop down my mobile tractor unit, then deploy my salvage drones and grab all the loot that there is there. And there is a lot of worthless bloat at the moment, and if we could somehow find a way to, make the refining of these these currently worthless weapons, munitions, things like that, all of a sudden worthwhile, because they will yield us a little bit of Zydrine, a little bit of Megasite, Noxium, things like that, some Isogen potentially as well, then that could really incentivize these, and that could help with, well, at the moment I've got containers full of basically worthless modules that I found during my PvE activities, and trying to revalue that as well could just mean that it's not just miners that actually have their time more rewarded, but potentially almost all PvE in the game could see an increased reward for their time spent when it comes to looting, when it comes to grabbing everything that a site potentially has to offer. So hopefully that works out, because I would love to see that. I would love to see it making sense to grab all the loot and refine the majority of that into raw materials for stuff that you really want. So hopefully that works out. And then prices for minerals, of course, these are already changing, and if you want loss to be more meaningful, obviously that should mean prices going up. What I do want to do as well is speculate a little bit. As I've said, I thought a little bit about this before I actually made the video, and I've been speculating and thinking a little bit about the potential impacts, and this one I really find very interesting. Low-sec, which is quite often considered the most neglected space in EVE Online, lowest population, the most dangerous space in EVE Online as well, with just the hardest place to live in. After that, I think wormhole space is considered more dangerous, and then nullsec and highsec are quite often considered to be very equivalent with each other because of how well empire building can actually work in the previous situations when it comes to resources in nullsec as well. So giving that exclusivity for Isogen, I still suspect massive stocks to be out there, so that impact will not be immediate. But Noxium had already been going up in price quite substantial, and that is going to create a very, very interesting dynamic, I think, where I'm really curious to see exactly what's going to happen. There's quite a few scenarios possible, of course, but I personally see the low-sec residents, the people that currently actually decide to live into low-sec, to be pirates, really sturdy players that actually thrive on the cutthroat aspect of EVE Online, on you know, taking what you can, taking from others, and fighting for every scrap that they can. And so having to interact with that space all of a sudden to get Isogen and Noxium is going to be very interesting. Are these locals going to mine? Honestly, I don't think so. Will they make deals with other players? Honestly, I don't think they're really the deal-making kind. Now, nullsec could decide to really overthrow everything and try to take over lowsec for those Isogen and Noxium resources. But I personally think that this is potentially really a time for nullsec to shine. They could really stamp their mark on the EVE Online sandbox here by basically organizing a complete blockade of mining, by just going after everything that moves, destroying everything that they can. You know, from the live stream, we know that this is not the end game. This is not the final state of resources in EVE Online. So it's a limited window, and it could be interesting to see how lowsec reacts to all of this, and perhaps they'll react with scorn for being you know, what they might feel as being the more neglected part of EVE Online. And this is really an opportunity for them to hit back to HiSec, to industry, to the entire sandbox, to nullsec as well, because they have something that nullsec will all of a sudden want very, very much. And how all of that is going to play out for me is going to be very interesting. On a more personal note, close to Dital, there are some lowsec islands as well, so perhaps they're making deals and things like that could be possible. It could be in the future. Because of course, for me personally as well, this throws quite a bit of a wrench in my vision of a Mars space growing to become like a more competitive trade hub compared to Jita. Well, in this resource situation, I don't see a lot of growth, and as a result, yeah, the dream of a Mar blossoming, or Dital blossoming, my own market blossoming, it's gonna be very hard to actually see that come to fruition. nullsec being hit the hardest, that is definitely the case, but I feel like we have to be honest on this. Where does this feeling of loss being completely meaningful dominate? I personally feel like that is in nullsec as well. And then HiSec, I think is very interesting as well, and some people say that giving them the exclusivity over Tritanium is too much, it's too valuable, and I can see where you're coming from. Tritanium is a very unique mineral. It's the most bulky mineral in the game, the hardest to transport, and that means that I think HiSec is getting the most value out of two aspects that are going to be forced by this change. That is the increased need for transportation, for moving stuff around, and the highest value out of compression, because of course compressed Veldspar potentially will become one of the highest sought after things from nullsec. In order to get their Tritanium in, they'll want that under compressed Veldspar form. And that could mean that compressing in HiSec could basically become the one that yields you the most, ISK becomes the most valuable compression that you can potentially do in the game. Transporting stuff closer to lowsec, closer to nullsec will also be one of the most sought after activities, because it is the bulkiest mineral. So having freighters move that stuff is all of a sudden also probably a lot more lucrative for the players that do that, and it may be a little bit too much. On the other hand, I also want to mention that HiSec is the incubation chamber of EVE Online, and giving new players the feeling that, well, I'm mining Tritanium, but this is actually worth a hell of a lot, and players actually value what I do, and moving that Tritanium to certain places to trade it for a higher price is valuable. That's very important as well, of course. Give these players the feeling and the realization that what they do in the sandbox matters as well. giving them basically the exclusivity of Tritanium could potentially help with that as well. So, well, man, we've already been going for 20 minutes. There's maybe one last thing that I want to cover on this one as well. It is a super complex topic, of course. That is botting was clearly a worry from a lot of players as well when this dev block dropped. CCP tried to cover that a little bit as well, where they're making more promises, saying we're developing the tools, we're very active, but they're also pointing to their track record at the moment. ISK on these illegal sites is basically very expensive. It's going for a very expensive price, and from my viewpoint, doing EVE talk, I'm seeing the hesitation in Plex prices to go up, also as one of the signs that CCP is actually currently really working hard on countering bots and being decently successful, because it is the end of the summer, we've got a big war going. Usually that stuff means increased demand and increased prices for Plex, and then of course botting activities tends to exacerbate any increased price in Plex, and at the moment we're just not going anywhere. So I feel like there's a big part of the market that's hesitating, potentially because all of those open faucets from bots may actually not be having as much of an impact on the game as what we've seen in previous situations. So overall, to quickly recap my feelings on this, well, I'm not outright positive, I'm not outright negative, I'm more curious as to what's going to happen here, because yeah, this will throw a wrench in my plans of building up Detal, building up Amar, things like that. So short term, I'm looking at low-sec specifically. Should I start to do something in low-sec? Potentially we could. There's lots of low-sec space close to Detal. How will the low-sec residents react to this newfound power, this newfound monopoly that they basically have in the game? I think that's going to be super interesting to see. Medium term, how long will all of this last? How long until CCP then finally comes with those new opportunities, that full roadmap, that full plan to come into fruition? And of course, what's behind all of that? What's going to happen there? That to me is also pretty damn exciting. But for the short term, I have to be honest, it's also going to be crunch time, batten down the hatches. I'm going to put everything I can into maintaining my structures, maintaining the services that I've got up and running, but it's probably not going to be easy at the moment. In fact, I am mining for some extra Noxium, for some extra Isogen, trying to get just a few more stocks at the ready in case of me needing or wanting to do some stuff with that. And this does mean that we are in for some lean times potentially for EVE Online, but I'm willing to roll with punches here. I love the game too much. This is also a sandbox, and I personally do believe CCP when they say that they have a plan and that they're doing all of this for the long-term health of the game. Giving meaning to loss, more meaning to loss in EVE Online, I feel is very important, and so I'm actually behind CCP when it comes to these changes, even though I myself will probably suffer a little bit on my day-to-day activities in EVE Online as well. And that's what I want to share with you guys about this dev block. Hopefully people have calmed down a little bit. I personally look forward to all of this. It's a challenge to overcome in EVE Online, and I'm gonna give it my all. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.